Baton Rouge, Louisiana, is DYing, hollowing out from the inside while America's attention stays fixed on the city 60 miles to its south. This state capital of nearly 230,000 people is losing population, losing tax revenue, losing its wealthiest residents to suburban secession, and dealing with a violent crime rate that puts it in the bottom 10% of every city in the country. And almost nobody outside Louisiana is paying attention. When people think of Louisiana, they think of New Orleans. They think of Mardi Gras, of the French Quarter, of a tourism economy worth $10.4 billion that welcomed over 19 million visitors in 2024 alone. New Orleans employs 80,000 people in hospitality alone. It has cultural cachet. It has international name recognition. And here is the uncomfortable part. It is actually getting safer. New Orleans saw murders drop 38% in a single year. Armed robberies fell 38%. Aggravated burglaries dropped 44%. Meanwhile, Baton Rouge quietly moved in the opposite direction. The city recorded 112 murders in 2022, then 102 in 2023. Then the first quarter of 2024 shattered the city's own homicide record with 32 killings in just 3 months. The violent crime rate sits at 1,028 per 100,000 residents. If you live in Baton Rouge, your odds of becoming a victim of violent crime are 1 in 98. The overall crime rate runs 196% higher than the national average. And what Police Chief T.J. Morse finds most frustrating isn't just the violence itself, it's the revolving door. He says it is extremely frustrating when we see low bonds and when people are getting released. He says we are arresting a very small number of citizens in Baton Rouge who are committing these crimes. For context, Louisiana already houses the nation's most notorious maximum security facility, Angola Prison, just an hour north of the capital, underscoring the state's broader struggles with incarceration and crime. The people committing those crimes keep getting younger. In 2024, juveniles accounted for 9% of homicide victims. 16 juveniles were arrested for murder, nearly double the 9 arrested the year before. So, how did the capital of Louisiana get here? The answer is a story of fragmentation that spans decades, stretching across the Interstate 10 and Interstate 12 corridors that connect this metro region. It starts with schools. Baton Rouge endured the longest federal school desegregation order in American history from 1956 to 2003. 47 years. When Judge Parker issued a key ruling in 1981, it triggered an exodus. White families did not just leave the school district, they fled the parish entirely. Within 2 decades, about 2/3 of white public school students in the greater Baton Rouge metro had enrolled in Ascension or Livingston parish districts instead. Then came the splinter districts within East Baton Rouge itself. Zachary broke away. Central broke away. Today, Zachary's schools are 42% white. Central's are 73% white. The original East Baton Rouge Parish School District is just 12% white. 89% of its students are non-white. And what kind of education are those students getting? The district earned an overall C rating from the state, which sounds middling until you look beneath the surface. Only 22% of students are proficient in math. Only 36% are proficient in reading. The 2 A-rated high schools, Baton Rouge Magnet and Liberty, are selective magnet schools that educate just 17% of the district's 40,000 children. D and F-rated schools educate 41% of students. More than 40% of children attend schools rated D or F. That's not a gap, that's a chasm. Meanwhile, Southern University, the city's historically black institution, continues to serve the community, but even higher education cannot offset the foundational educational crisis. In April 2024, the Louisiana Supreme Court approved the incorporation of St. George, a new city carved directly out of East Baton Rouge Parish. About 100,000 people, the wealthiest and whitest portion of the parish, seceded to form their own municipality. St. George's black population sits at just 12% compared to the parish's 47.2%. Community organizer Laramie Griffin, a lifelong Baton Rouge resident, does not mince words about what this represents. He says, "This is essentially a land grab, a money grab that will decimate the city of Baton Rouge." He calls it neo-segregation. The financial impact is already being felt. St. George's departure blew a $50 million budget hole in East Baton Rouge Parish's budget. An estimated $48.3 million in annual tax revenue, nearly 8% of the parish's total, walked out the door with those residents. The people who remain in Baton Rouge proper are disproportionately poorer. The median household income sits at just under $50,000. The poverty rate hits 25.7%, roughly 1 in 4 residents, and the city's population continues its slide, declining at about 0.6% per year. Mayor Sharon Weston Broome faces the impossible task of maintaining city services with a shrinking tax base and growing needs. Here's the bitter irony. The suburbs that have drained Baton Rouge are booming. Livingston Parish grew by 9% between 2020 and 2025, the fastest growing parish in the entire state. Ascension Parish grew by nearly 7%. The broader Baton Rouge metro actually surpassed 880,000 people in 2024, its largest population on record. The region is growing. The city at its center is shrinking. And then there's the disaster that almost nobody remembers. In August 2016, an unnamed storm, literally no name, just a low-pressure system, parked itself over Baton Rouge and dumped over 20 inches of rain across multiple parishes, 7.1 trillion gallons of water. That is 3 times what Hurricane Katrina left behind. Rivers shattered records. 146,000 homes were damaged. The governor and his family were forced to evacuate the governor's mansion when chest-high water filled the basement, the first time that had ever happened in Louisiana history. The damage totaled $8.7 billion. Beyoncé and her sister Solange held a benefit that raised $4 million. Taylor Swift donated $1 million. But from the federal government, for every dollar of damage, Congress provided Louisiana with 13 cents. 13 cents on the dollar. Compare that to the 65 to 70 cents per dollar that went to recovery efforts after Hurricanes Katrina and Sandy. The no-name storm got no-name funding. Baton Rouge still has not fully recovered its flood infrastructure. Half of East Baton Rouge Parish sits within a flood hazard area. The Coméhé River Diversion Canal, a massive 300-foot wide, 50-foot deep channel designed to route floodwater away from 700,000 people, will not be finished until 2028 at the earliest, 12 years after the flood. So, is there any hope? There might be. In March 2025, Hyundai announced a $5.8 billion ultra-low carbon steel plant in Ascension Parish. It is the largest single economic development project the region has seen in 2 decades. There will be more than 1,300 direct jobs at an average salary of $95,000 and an estimated 4,100 indirect jobs, over 5,400 total. Louisiana has committed $600 million in taxpayer funds to support the facility. But notice the location. Ascension Parish, not Baton Rouge. The pattern repeats itself. Investment, growth, opportunity flowing to the suburbs, while the city proper watches from across the parish line. Baton Rouge Area Chamber President Laurie Melanson called the Hyundai plant the biggest announcement since the chamber was founded in 2005. And that is true. But when the plant begins operations around 2030, the question is, who actually benefits? The workers who commute from Livingston and Ascension, or the residents of a city that has been losing people, losing revenue, and losing ground for decades? Andrew Fitzgerald of the Greater Baton Rouge Economic Partnership puts it diplomatically. Compared to peers across the state, Baton Rouge is holding its own. Holding its own. That is the most optimistic framing available for a city with a 1 in 98 chance of violent victimization, a quarter of its residents in poverty, and a $50 million budget hole from suburban secession. Baton Rouge was named the state capital in 1846, specifically to get away from what legislators called sinful New Orleans. Almost 180 years later, New Orleans is thriving on its sins, its music, its food, its party culture, pulling in billions. And Baton Rouge, the virtuous alternative, is quietly coming apart at the seams while everyone watches New Orleans.